Hello everyone, welcome to Unfiltered, and my name is Matt. And in today's video, we are going to discuss The View. And if you're not interested maybe too much or hasn't watched The View, I think there's some interesting topics to still discuss because we're going to just talk, the workplace and just things like that. I try not to talk too much, about my job because I try to keep my personal life and my job separate. But, just thinking about my work history, I have been in, before my current job in leadership and management. I used to be assistant manager at KB Toys. But I think that we all can come from a background where we probably all have worked at one point in our lives, or have been a boss. And we probably each have an opinion on this. And I thought the first story that we start with is Kathy Najimy on The View. Now, this happened, both of these stories are a couple months old. Matthew's always late to the game with gossip and cooler talk. But I just thought it was really interesting of watching this interview. So Kathy Najimy was on The View talking about Hocus Pocus 2 and its success of coming back on Disney Plus. And the conversation, and it was interesting, I heard about it, was actually transitioned to questions about Sister Act 3 and, really about, Kathy Najimy and her previous success as far as, really coming into fame out of that movie. And, she was an actress beforehand and things like that, but really that character that she played was really a huge thing to catapult her out into the limelight for that movie. And Sonny Hostin had asked the question about, hey, have you heard anything about Hocus Pocus 3, about getting the gang together? And then, obviously, because Whoopi Goldberg was involved in that, and Kathy probably heard that, there's some things going around. She's heard rumblings, and she looked over at Whoopi in regards to, saying, hey, so what's going on with that? And Whoopi was like, oh, so it's happening. It's, being in the work. She goes, thank you to you guys because getting this Hocus Pocus out there. They were like, hey, let's bring the sisters back. And what made the conversation awkward, was Kathy going, okay, yeah, yeah. And probably waiting for Whoopi to say and of course, I would love for you to come back into the movie and work on this project. But that was never mentioned at all. And I think we've seen Whoopi extend the offer for other projects she's been on in The View. So I think lots of people had lots of comments in regards to that. It was really awkward at the table between them, and I'll be like, Whoopi, you can give her an answer. Come on, I mean, you are probably in charge here. And I think that with any workplace thing, it's if you worked really hard on a project and you were part and involved in something, and then to see maybe someone else is bringing it back or taking part of your work that also contributed towards that being in the light it was and the success that it was, sure, you would have certain feelings. We're only human. So I could understand that. And maybe Whoopi's well, you had Hocus Pocus got bring back, give me my chance. I don't know. But that's our first topic. I'm not sure how you felt about Kathy to Jimmy, kind of the awkwardness of and Whoopi not acknowledging in regards to that. Yes, you can be a part of this, and just kind of going, yeah. And Whoopi's working. They're working on a script, so she must know that something's up. Hopefully, maybe she called Kathy afterwards. But if she hadn't called her before, it's a little awkward that to call her afterwards that interview. So the next story in regards to View is that they had the cast, or I'm not sure if you call them the cast, but the ensemble from Shark Tank there. And the Sharks were kind of talking about, the show and the live show, which actually received more negative reviews in its live format. And they were talking about workplace as well. And one of the panelists, the host of The View, asked the Sharks about quiet quitting. So let's talk about the definition of quiet quitting. Quiet quitting refers to doing the minimum requirements of one's job and putting no more time, effort, or enthusiasm than absolutely necessary. So basically, it's doing the job that you're paid for, which I think most people have always been doing that. Hey, you're here to work 9 to 5, which I don't think anyone works really 9 to 5. It's usually 8 to 5 or 8 to 4:30, right? And, this is a responsibility job. A lot of people do fall into, here, I'm going to start at 8 o'clock. I'm going to leave at 4:30. I have kids, I have life, I have other things, but I'm going to do my job while I'm here, and I'm going to do everything that's required to me. And some people don't go above and beyond, and I think that that definition of what's going above and beyond, to an employer versus an employee, could be a disconnect. But I think most people are like thinking like, hey, you're going to stay late, you're going to do extra work, to cover maybe somebody else. And a lot of people are like, for me as an employee, that's not good because I'm now doing two jobs. I'm doing extras so you can save money. And I just see you taking kind of all the profit, and I'm stressing myself out. And I think that, the great resignation and things like that have led to people kind of in a pandemic reevaluating their lives, which nothing wrong with that. So the shark responded about quiet quitters that said, I get rid of these people. And that's my goal here is to get them out of my workplace. And these are not people that I want on my team, and I send them to my competitors. Now, I think that is illustrating the issue that quiet quitters and a lot of people are talking about, is that this disconnect between the employee and employers that we see happening right here. Now, right now, employees, workers do have the upper hand. We'll see for how long, because naturally it's going to shift where employers are going to have the upper hand. Now, I think that's kind of tension is not new. This has always been in place, but employees have been fed up for multiple reasons. And I think a lot of that has to do through generations, decades, that the cost of living has gone up and the pay gap has mismatched that. I think one of the things I found interesting is like Katie Porter, if anyone, tried it. I'm trying not to go too political here. But just to talk about companies and what she represented, is that how much companies have kept their profits, towards keeping up to the top and not kind of trickling down, which things you would do towards wages and kind of benefits. That I think in the 1940s and around then, you would have companies kind of, keeping a profit of 5 to 15%. Now, here you see that lots of the areas of investment, that 50% is not going to the actual employees for wages and things. And I think that's also apparent by some CEOs during their earnings calls, advising that the reason why they're raising prices is not because of inflation or anything like that as only a contributing factor, but they're also doing it because they can and consumers are willing to pay for it, and because you're a company that is on the stock exchange, your kind of main obligation is to your stockholders in making a profit. So if you can get more money, then why not, right? And there's nowhere more evident that that is taking place than Disney right now with their parks and kind of, changing their kind of plans and packages and charging for everything. I never knew that you kind of had to pay for parking at the hotel. I was like, Jesus Christ, there's a lot that you have to kind of, pay in regards to that coming out of your pocket just to go on vacation. And that's why home ownership and I feel like Disney vacations are becoming a thing that probably are not attainable for a lot of people. I only went to Disney once, and we had to do like the oh my god, the timeshare kind of preview, and I was a teenager. My parents did it, and that's the way they were able to pay for a vacation for us. And it was just one time, and we went to Puerto Rico to visit family. But visiting family is not, not the same. Now, like I said, things have gotten more expensive, and that's why I think a lot of employees are saying like, I'm not gonna push myself much more. Like, I'm already maybe some of these. A lot of people are working like two jobs, or having their spouse have to work, which, in the previous, when people were able to buy homes and things like that and have what they called the American dream, you could have a single, like one person in the household working while the other one, staying home and taking care of the family and things like that. But that is really impossible right now. So, I mean, workers have been doing the same job and oftentimes more for the same pay, or that pay that hasn't kept up with the cost of living. And as a workforce, how long can they take that, right? So many people are saying just doing what is required is what they were hired for, and they don't want to do any more than that. Now, companies don't like this because, of course, they're losing out, and as Katie Porter had indicated in her presentation, they're keeping lots of the profit, and this is something else that they can't because now they're going to have to hire another worker. Now, I've always pushed myself harder wherever I've worked. It's just the mentality that I've had growing up. My father was a truck driver. My mother, took care of us, was a stay-at-home mom, but then eventually, I had to go into the workforce to support the family as well. Worked at a doctor's office, retail, and all those things. And my father had experienced discrimination in the workplace, but continued to go past it because, my father learned English in his 20s. And, I, through them, learned this mindset of pushing myself really hard and working really hard. And I felt at times I had to work twice as hard to get half as much in some of the places that I have worked in the past. So I I'm always somebody who's going to push myself. It's a hard mentality to change, but as I look around at the younger generation, other people, I completely get it of, just wanting to do what you're paid for, to not push yourself any harder. I think one thing just to keep in mind is at least the reason I do it because that's who I am. But I also didn't recognize that if I don't push myself harder and I don't separate myself from the pack, um, that's going to probably eliminate me getting a promotion in regards to that. And there is a relationship between companies and, their employees. If companies, start saying the same thing, like, hey, we're just going to do the minimum as well. I mean, we'll do everything we need to do, but like all these company parties and the things that you want, we're not going to really do. And then you have both sides kind of quiet quitting and then just have a miserable situation. So I think it's like, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, right? So I think that my response to the Sharks in regards to this, like if I was there to really respond, um, what is your company doing as far as like also going above and beyond? Like, what do you see like things that your company has offered, to also entice this talent who's pushing themselves, like the Sharks indicated, to continue to do that? Because I think that right now we have lots of topics around to healthcare. Many companies, select a healthcare package that really determines what things you can and cannot be covered for. I know that many people, like, for example, have to pay a lot out of pocket, and even with their employer insurance. It's not what it used to be, as far as like certain companies that have really good insurance packages. I think that, some companies have really great packages, some have really crappy packages. I remember one of the companies I worked for, everywhere I went, I couldn't even use that insurance. Everything was kind of denied. They're like, "Oh, sorry, we can't cover your allergy shots. Oh, sorry, blood work is not covered. Oh, sorry, your actual physical at the time was not covered." I mean, with my new insurance, it's covered, but I don't have to pay anything. But there's still some things that even right now today that I don't get done, or because of the cost. So like if my doctor says, "Hey, I know you need an MRI," I was like, "Oh, last time I paid like I think it was $800 for just that one thing after insurance. I'm not sure if I want to do that." And that's the real choices that people are making. So I think that's like a fair question to the Sharks to say like, "Okay, so what are you doing that's above and beyond?" And not what's your job to do. I mean, because let's not lie. The Sharks are getting lots of money. They're in the top 1% of income earners here. So they are obviously living way more comfortable for the work that they're putting in than other people would be getting for putting in the same effort. So let's not lie about that. I don't think that, for them to say, "Hey, you need to work as hard as me." I think like Elon Musk is a good example, like calls people 1 in the morning and everything. Hopefully they're getting compensated pretty well. Because, that's a little ridiculous if you were being paid like minimum wage or sometimes even median wage. And that's the problem also with, I think that employees are seeing in companies. A lot of companies will say, hey, we're being very competitive with our salaries. And then you realize that you're paying the median, which the median for everybody sucks. And we can't afford even cost of living with the median income in our area. So when you're saying like, hey, we're very competitive, take the word competitive out of your package and salary and just say, hey, we pay you what you need to pay, because a lot of companies do that. And that's their form of quiet quitting, is like, we're only going to pay you what the area really pays. We're not going to do extra for you. And that's where I kind of think that companies kind of lose their ground here. And I think that the sharks also kind of lose their ground when you kind of think about that. It's like, if we're not going to do anything extra that's really incentivizing the employees, like giving good packages that take care of them so they can go to work and be healthy, and you're not paying like a competitive salary that's at least a little above the median and also meets cost of living standards in the area, then I kind of think, sorry, you're going to have quiet quitters, and I can understand that. I mean, they're doing their job. I mean, and you indicated what the requirements were of the job. So you can't blame them for just doing the requirements of the job. Seems a little ridiculous. At first, when I heard the term quiet quitting, I was like, well, let's just see, this is wrong. And then I read it, I was like, wait, they're just doing their job. What's going on? Oh my gosh. It's just like crazy. I mean, I think we're always going to have this kind of back and forth no matter where you go in regards to it. And I think that hopefully there are some companies that do lead the pack in regards to this, but I think other areas it is a little kind of discouraging. And I think, unfortunately, because it's so widespread, the term quiet quitting, it's definitely happening in more companies than we actually would care to admit. And, you know, like I said, I'm trying to avoid making this like a political thing, but I think that there's some things that sometimes you can see where government, and I know people have mixed feelings about unions stepping in here, what makes these things kind of feel kind of needed in some of these industries. So, unfortunately, we knew that companies would be responding in their own way. That's just the way things work. You know, I think if anybody's a leader, you're kind of like in the middle of this. You have reasonable requests that come from both sides, and sometimes unreasonable requests that comes from either side. So, I mean, quiet firing is this balance that, if you've been in the workplace for a while, is not uncommon. So it was only the yin to the yang, the opposite reaction, the positive and negative force in this conversation, but a necessary kind of step in the evolution to try to get this kind of moving where it needs to go. So we'll see what happens in regards to this kind of force of quiet quitting. I think that, I've been in the rut of just going to work and accepting, my life and saying, maybe I'll enjoy life when I'm retired. I don't have the income to go on vacation. I don't have that kind of luxury and ability. And I think that certain people do, and unfortunately some people do make the sacrifice to go into debt to potentially go on a vacation. I have staycations. And then I go, this staycation is going to be different. I'm actually going to do something. And I never do. So let's get your opinion. I mean, we'll see what happens, like I said, and how long until companies regain their power or continue to overwork American individuals. I mean, America has always been known as the country of where we overwork and we push ourselves really hard. And I think that a lot of people, this is a long time coming, are pushing back on that. So like I said, let me know your thoughts in regards to this topic. If you like this topic and you like me to kind of talking about these things, leave a comment, hit the like button, and I'll try to do more of these if, this kind of elicit responses. I like business. I like these kind of conversations around this, and I like being honest in regards to maybe what I see as needing to change in this kind of area. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and until next time, stay safe. Bye.